one of our favorite stories to talk about, and it's well documented, was a couple on their way to their wedding. They were changing planes in New York. They were supposed to get on an international flight. They were supposed to be married 2-3 days later, and flight after flight was getting canceled. They didn't understand at the time was there was a terrible winter storm that had effectively not just cut down air traffic, but as the night would unfold, there was no venue to get married. There was no city to get married in. There was a natural disaster.
It sounds like the beginning of a movie.
Absolutely. We're sending them a virtual credit card through our app so that they can just go to a bar and a restaurant, have something to eat, wait out till we get more information. And as it slowly turns out that they're not getting married in the destination wedding of their dreams, and they're discussing the fact that they probably should just go back to Colorado, figure out what happens next. One of our support agents proposed that, Faye, we would get them married. If they were willing to just stay in New York, we would figure it out. And rather than worry about them collecting receipts and reimburse them, which obviously we would do as part of the course, since what they needed was solutions right now, what if we just found a hotel and put them up there and found a wedding officiant and took care of it? And we did. We organized the license. We had a staff member at the time who was authorized to marry people, who was based in Florida. He flew up to New York.
That's crazy.
I mean, it wasn't even we paid for it. We did it. It was like we officiated the wedding. And it was a truly special moment for every single person in the company.
Wow.
Think about what was possible. If your insurance, if your assistance provider, like more than gave a damn. I mean, like if they really, really care. And that was probably around the time that we started thinking about the association of customers loving us.
Welcome to the Ageas podcast. Buckle up. This episode is brought to you by CardsBiz, a business card too good to give away. This episode is brought to you by Better Weight for Life, transformational weight loss aid, led by U.S. board-certified physicians, providing access to GLP-1 medications like Wegovy and Zepbound that are proven to help you lose weight and keep it off.
My favorite somewhat Australian entrepreneur, right? It's like probably the only one I know personally, but I'm so happy you're here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So we're going to talk about your entrepreneurial journey. We're going to talk about the fact that you managed to co-found, I think it's the fastest growing insurance company in the United States right now. Is it true?
Protection company, as they're officially say.
As of so it's very, very impressive. But I want to maybe kind of give you the floor and maybe just like, who's Daniel? Like, who's Mr. Green?
Sure. So I'm Dan Green. I am originally Australian. I am currently living in Tel Aviv. I'm a father, a husband, a serial entrepreneur, and occasionally a CTO of a couple of startups, the latest one being Faye. We're the fastest growing, most loved travel insurance and travel protection brand in the United States.
So it's actually very interesting that you say most loved. So like, why is that important for you to say that? And how do you measure that?
So I think people don't tend to associate positive emotions with insurance providers. And travel in particular is an incredibly emotional experience and journey. I mean, I think each person when they're traveling is going through their own version of the hero's journey. And things going wrong are always multiplied. I mean, we started the company because in a previous company, we had people traveling all the time, and we understood that no matter how smart you were, how well organized you were, how well traveled you were, if it's 2 a.m. in the morning and something goes terribly wrong at a small airport in the middle of nowhere, you often become a illogical emotional wreck. And more often than not, what you need at that moment is a calm voice, someone who's being reasonable, and solutions. And that was really something that we saw an opportunity to provide, not to be a reimbursement service, to be someone who tried wherever possible to provide solutions. And we hoped that in exchange, you would finish your trip deciding that you weren't just glad that you had chosen Faye to protect your trip. You in fact loved us for it. And we even collect a page of testimonials on our website that we call the Love Page, specifically around times that people talk about how they love us or they loved our service.
Does your wife know you get love letters?
To be honest, it's never addressed to me personally. It's always addressed to someone called Faye, so I feel fairly safe.
But it's very interesting because I don't know a lot of companies. I mean, there are some companies, but I don't know a lot of like technology companies, right? And definitely insurance companies, but use the word love, right? So it's a very interesting. And this like jumped straight in my ear. So is that something that you developed as a mission? Is it something that you started with in the day one to kind of say you want the word love as part of your definition?
I don't know if we consciously started with going for the word loved,
Okay.
but it emerged multiple times very early on. And I think we realized that there was something really special about that being the emotional attachment. One of our favorite stories to talk about, and it's well documented, was a couple on their way to a wedding, their wedding. And they were changing planes in New York. They were supposed to get on an international flight. They were supposed to be married 2-3 days later. And flight after flight was getting cancelled. What they didn't understand at the time was there was a terrible winter storm that had effectively not just cut down air traffic, but as the night would unfold, they realized that this storm had in fact, I think, pretty much turned their wedding venue to rubble. There was no venue to get married. There was no city to get married in. There was a natural disaster that had taken place.
It sounds like the beginning of a movie. Seriously.
Absolutely. And we're sending them a virtual credit card through our app so that they can just go to a bar and a restaurant, have something to eat, wait out till we get more information. And as it slowly turns out that they're not getting married in the destination wedding of their dreams. And they're discussing the fact that they probably should just go back to Colorado, figure out what happens next. One of our support agents proposed that Faye would marry them, that we'd just get them married. If they were willing to just stay in New York, we would figure it out. And rather than worry about them collecting receipts and reimburse them, which obviously we would do as part of the course, since what they needed was solutions right now, what if we just found a hotel and put them up there and found a wedding officiant and took care of it? And we did. We organized the license. We had a staff member at the time who was authorized to marry people, who was based in Florida. He flew up to New York.
That's crazy.
It 2 customers in Central Park. I mean, it wasn't even we paid for it. We did it. It was like we officiated the wedding. And it was a truly special moment for every single person in the company.
Wow.
To think about what was possible if your insurance, if your assistance provider, like, more than gave a damn. I mean, like, if they really, really cared. And that was probably around the time that we started thinking about the association of customers loving us.
And well, I mean, that's this is the first time I hear the story, but it's an amazing story, and it's very interesting, right? The stories we tell ourselves as a person, as a society, as a company, are the things that shape us. So this is like an amazing example of an extreme situation. But how is that expressed, let's say, in the day to day, in the mundane?
So one of the things which I think we notice is that everyone is really attuned to when customers actually say they love us. And often that gets posted in Slack channels. As I said, we collect some of them on the website. We describe ourselves as a most loved company. I think it's something that then becomes part of how we think about the brand. We want to be trusted, right? That's sakes when you do insurance, but we want to be loved. And that's a really interesting lens through which we think about the relationship that we might have with you. And one of the things that we don't just hope, I mean, we see the evidence for it, is we have customers, and we're not that old a company. We have customers who travel with us time and time again. And loyalty in our industry is not trivial. And I think that in many ways, that's the reward that we get as a company, that if we can not just be trusted but loved by our customers, then they will return to benefit from our services time and time again.
So, I mean, you're a bit riding high. You have love of customers. You publicly announced you crossed the $100 million in revenue. So we could say that. I know, but it wasn't smooth sailing. So why don't you kind of take us back to kind of like, how did it started and the trials of tribulation that you had to endure to get to this point?
Sure. I mean, for the longest time, I would tell people do not buy a lottery ticket from me. So the two founders of Faye, we've been working together for about 15 years now. This is not our first startup. And around 5 or 6 years ago, we made the decision that we wanted to build a new startup together. We went through the ideation phase. We were committed to working together. We were an excellent team, but we hadn't entirely decided on the idea. And because our previous company had so many staff members who needed to travel on a regular basis, this was before a time in which tools like Zoom or Teams, Google Meet were ubiquitous. People really preferred to have meetings in person. People got on planes, sometimes just to have a conversation that today you would send as a Slack message. But 10 years ago, you had that conversation in person. And we had built a company that was very, very data oriented. So we thought, okay, we're somewhat travel experts. We have a passion and skill set around data. Let's build a travel technology company. And the first iteration of the company was I guess you would call it an AI, but this was before that term was in such common use. It was a tool that could analyze all the information that was publicly available and some not publicly available about your next trip, determine the likelihood that you would make it to your destination on time, monitor that trip. And should anything go wrong anywhere along the way, or should the risk get too high, it would alert you and offer you instantly alternative flights, other ways of getting to your destination. So hopefully, let's say there's one flight leaving 2 hours earlier and there's only 3 seats left on it, then you just needed to be in the first 3 people to get that information to have a shot at getting out before anyone else. And that company really launched properly in December 2019. So
a wonderful time to launch a travel company.
So we launched the company and we're speaking to potential early customers, potential early investors. We're actually growing very quickly and in a way that we're incredibly proud of. But people keep asking us, are you at all concerned about the news that's coming out of China? And then eventually China and other parts of Southeast Asia, and then, potentially China and parts of the US. And perhaps it was sort of out of denial, but we kept saying, no, it'll pass.
I think most of us, it's very difficult to bring yourself back to that period of time. But yes, I remember.
We looked at the bird flu pandemic. We said it's not something to be worried about. And next thing we know, we're unable to physically work from the same room because we are, in fact, in a city under a lockdown. Not authorized to go more than, I think, 1 mile from your current residence. And even then, it was really only supposed to be for, I think, grocery shopping. And even still, we'd raised a little money. We saw the number of travelers using our product go from 50 to 60 people a day to 1 a week. And we really just kept saying to ourselves, it's okay. Give it a week. Give it 2 weeks. This will all blow over. This will just be a blip. This is a blessing in disguise because we're so early on, we can just use the time to build all the features that we weren't getting to because we were so busy servicing customers. And then we'll come back stronger than ever. And I think it was an amazing experience. It allowed us to really, really get to know the industry, have phone calls with people in the travel industry who wouldn't have given you the time of day, but everyone was trying to figure it out, have phone calls and meetings with, virtual meetings with senior executives of banks and other such institutions who also had a little too much time on their hands and were willing to meet. But at some point at the end of 2020, I think we, along with everyone else, realized this might be here to stay. And the feedback that we got from every single person who used the product, who were either the sorts of people who really had to fly, they just had jobs that they either figured out how to fly during the pandemic or they ruined sometimes a decade of work, or people who needed to fly for repatriation. They wanted to get home to their family. They were trying to get out of isolation. They're trying to get home. And I think at the time we charged, I don't remember if it was $5 or $15 a flight, but we just kept hearing, I will pay you 10 times. I will pay you 20 times that amount of money if you can just agree that if something goes wrong, you pay for the solution instead of just giving me all the information. And that was the spark that led to Faye as it is today. And then a lot of things clicked into place and we grew much faster. And it's been, no startup is completely smooth sailing, but the speed with which we found product market fit and then eventually customer love was very fast. And now we're enjoying that journey that comes from everything growing faster than you expected. And like all good startups, every day something is on fire, and as you put that fire out, there's something else to deal with. But there's something incredibly exciting about dealing with all the fires that come from growing faster than you had expected and imagined,
Yeah.
and not the fires that come from wondering if the pandemic is going to be over next week because you'd really like your customers to come back.
So I want to go back to that moment, okay, because it's very interesting. And by the way, it's a theme also that I find myself revisiting even in this podcast, is that a lot of times the customer doesn't want the drill, they want the hole in the wall, right? So it's like people, like in your case, they didn't want the information, they just want the damn solution, right? That was a thing. But as an entrepreneur, guilty as charged, I'm going to say what I'm guilty of, but I developed this amazing drill. Like I developed this drill. Look, it's cool. It has all this horsepower and whatever drills have, right? And it's amazing and it's cool. And look at the specs and things like that. And how do you actually manage to do that mental shift? Because I know it's easy in retrospect when it actually works, right? But at times you just don't see it. So what enabled you to see it or to hear it?
I think we'd always taken it to heart that if you have the opportunity to talk to your customers, you absolutely should. Since we suddenly had only one customer a week, we really had all the time in the world
Okay.
to speak to these customers. And, I won't necessarily pretend to be the smartest person in the world here, but when you hear the same request on almost every single customer call, regardless of where these people are based in the world, regardless of their age, regardless of what they do for a living, you have to be really, really stubborn to not think to yourself, they might be onto something there. And I think the other motivation is we were very good at being financially conservative, but all entrepreneurs know that there is, in fact, a date at which working without a salary,
Yes.
whatever money you have taken from the bank and given to the company or whatever investment you have, like there is a date by which that money runs out. And of course, the game of entrepreneurship is never to get to that date. So a extended pandemic that showed no signs of abating, at least sort of 8-9 months in, customers that kept telling us that they would pay us 10 times more money if we could solve this other part of the problem. And a somewhat dwindling bank account were all a perfect confluence of events to show us that we didn't need divine inspiration. Like the writing was pretty literally on the wall in our case.
So interesting enough, you say if you were extremely well funded and you were doing a lot of development and you had a lot of noise, you might not have been able to hear.
There's a startup accelerator in the US, a quite well-known one called Y Combinator, and they made a comment one time when we were at one of their events that if you get accepted to Y Combinator, what they effectively do is they fill you up with rocket fuel. And one of the partners there said, you just need to understand that sometimes when you fill a rocket up with fuel, it goes to the moon and sometimes it explodes.
Yeah.
And I think only in hindsight, it was a gift that we had this opportunity to reassess and reevaluate. I suspect if we had raised a humongous amount of money, we would have thought to ourselves, well, we have a huge runway, we have a large war chest, let's just keep building. Yeah. Let's just stick to our original idea and see what happens when the world returns to normal. And we would have missed all of those other signs.
It's very interesting, right? It's a very mentally interesting exercise, right? In many ways. But so you figured something out, right? By lack chance or your ability to actually listen to your customers, and you start growing, right? Now that's also a challenge by itself, right? Like growing, like having massive growth and having to deal with a growing culture, growing customer base. So walk us through what that means.
So this is where I give a lot of credit to my co-founder and CEO of the company, that one of the smartest decisions that he made was we hired really good talent before we needed them. We were really opportunistic. We hired someone very senior from growth at Lemonade, which was at the time an incredibly successful home and rental insurance operation based out of New York. We hired someone who, amongst other things, had led brand and marketing efforts at Guesty, which had been an incredibly successful vacation rental platform. We managed to convince the head of all of claims and assistance at Allianz, which was at the time the largest travel insurance provider in the US. And this was the head of all of Allianz worldwide in travel at that point, the head of claims, to join us before we even had a product.
That's remarkable in many ways. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but that is remarkable.
I guess with hindsight, you're right. But at the time, it just felt like the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But really, it really helped us navigate those challenges. In fact, I think one of the things, this being my previous company was bootstrapped, so we didn't necessarily have a board of directors, and I think it led us to really appreciate the value of mentors and smart people and people who'd seen it before. And so, I mean, we do have a board of directors this time around, but separately, we were opportunistic and we brought on great talent sometimes before we needed them, and then those were the people who were able to help us navigate the challenges of growing, of which those challenges, of course, never end. But especially in those early days, still we have senior leaders who 3, 4, 5 years ago, before they joined the company, were managing much larger operations than they do now. So they have seen what the next few stages look like, and they can still help us navigate. For many of them, the more interesting challenge was to be part of the 0 to 1 phase. But they had already been part of the 1 to 100.
So what was the pitch? Like, how did you convince those people?
We saw an incredible opportunity for a changed world post-COVID, that America in particular had probably just woken up to the fact that travel insurance was not really a luxury or an optional extra, that their credit card wouldn't just take care of them, that you couldn't just call the nearest embassy if things went wrong. People were talking about all the horror stories. My credit card didn't cover the vast majority of my claim. There was no repatriation flight. I'm out of pocket thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars. And so we saw this unique opportunity that the vast majority of players in the space had no brand recognition, no love. People didn't even like them. And this was the opportunity for someone to emerge from COVID as the clear winner in this market and crack the code on what it would look like if you really, really cared. And you built a company not around the DNA of a 200-year-old insurance company that at some point had gotten into travel, but a company that thought about travel insurance, travel protection from day one. And I think as everyone was just itching to get on a plane again with their own experiences of COVID, that was a really compelling pitch.
So maybe let's, for the people who don't know, Faye, what is your offering? What do you actually do? And how is that different? You love, we already understand you love us more than everybody else, right? But beside the love, what actually do you do to and for your clients?
So we sell something called whole trip travel protection, which means we cover effectively 3 categories of things that might go wrong when you travel. The first is your health. So that's everything from helping you find a doctor, potentially getting a doctor to appear almost immediately on your phone and diagnose you remotely, reimbursing you if you need to seek medical attention and you just have the bills. If you're in hospital, liaising with the hospital and kind of taking care of that part of the process for you, organizing rescue flights, air ambulances, repatriation, getting a medical escort to sit on a flight with you and just help you get home. So all the things that you could think of when it comes to your health. Your stuff. What happens if you go to Reykjavik on a holiday, but your bags go to London? And your
story.
And your investment in the trip, where you saved up for a really long time. The deposit is expensive and entirely non-refundable. And now a member of your immediate family, for example, gets seriously ill just before you're supposed to travel. You can't go on the trip. You have other obligations. You would otherwise have to forfeit the deposit, which if it's right before your trip could be almost the entire cost of your trip. You want the money back so that you can plan this trip at a better time and go again. And so those are the 3 categories we cover. And then we provide a mobile app which allows us to be in easy contact with you, provide all the sorts of things you need to know. We track your flights. We can proactively tell you that your flight is delayed or canceled sometimes before you know it. We can send you a virtual credit card through Google Pay or Apple Pay. So we can even start paying for things whilst you're at the airport as part of the claim money. So you can effectively access it if it's an approved claim instantly, or instantly after the claim is approved. And that's a completely different experience to, I think, what a lot of people were used to, which is ticking a box somewhere in the purchase flow, vaguely remembering that you have a PDF that represents your travel insurance policy, getting home from a trip in which things have gone wrong, and hoping that you remember to keep all the receipts, and then starting the arduous process of digitizing those receipts, sending them over. Travel insurance, well, insurance companies in general, some of them still really love fax machines. They're clearly just not going away. And so that
I was just asked by an American financial institution to fax
right.
them like a signed letter. Yes.
So that idea that you could, as we said before, get solutions in the moment and not reimbursements later is really compelling. And I think for most people watching this, and for you yourself, if you miss a flight and I gave you a choice between $1,000 and you try and find yourself another flight, and you might find a flight for $1,800 and you might find a flight for $2,200, but you need to walk around the airport, or I just say to you, there's a flight leaving in 2 hours. Would you like to go on it? And it doesn't always work out that way, right? Sometimes you just have to go the path of reimbursement. But if I can just find you another flight in 2 hours time and put you on it, what do you care what I spent?
Thank you.
What do you convince the airline to pay for it, or I paid with you? I'm getting you home 3.5 hours later. That's a solution. And when we're able to do that, that is absolute magic in the eyes of our customers. And that is, it doesn't always work out, but when it does, that is the absolute pinnacle of being able to make magic happen for our customers, or marry them in Central Park, or just sometimes be the people who not just call the hospital every day, but call you every day to make sure you're okay.
So, I mean, it sounds amazing, and it sounds maybe even too good to be true in some ways.
I assure you, like all good insurance companies, terms and conditions apply.
Yeah.
We try our best.
What's interesting is about the business model also here, because like whatever you want to say about the old-fashioned check the box, maybe you get the money, maybe you don't at some point, and hey, I'll string you along, so I'll have to pay you very late. They're like, I understand that business model, right? It's like make it hard to pay out, get away with something, pay out as late as possible, right? And that economics work. So how do you manage such a complex business model in some ways, right? Or am I misunderstanding something?
So, I mean, on the business model itself, as much as it's probably true that if you make it really difficult to get a claim approved, there will be some percentage of people that drop out of the funnel.
And I'm not endorsing that, right? No way.
I understand. I think in this day and age, more people will persevere. They will get to the end of the funnel. We are in economically difficult times. If you have paid for insurance and you have an eligible claim, the extra 5 weeks or 3 months that you buy yourself in processing the claim slowly means that you still pay the money out, and now the customer really hates you.
Hates you. Yeah, that's what it was, right?
And probably doesn't want to ever purchase from you again, and probably tells all of their friends never to purchase from you again. And what a terrible experience. And for what? The money still gets paid. I mean, we can discuss that probably insurance companies have some tips and tricks to make some money whilst paying the claim, but we're not talking millions of dollars here. We're often talking thousands of dollars. And we're not talking 3 years. We're talking 3 months. So just if the claim is payable and you have the evidence and they have satisfied the criteria, and there's no legitimate reason not to withhold. I think companies do themselves such a disservice by adding friction and slowness. But then the other part of it is how you process that. And we were a insurance provider born in this decade. So most of the tools that we've built in the last 2-3 years or less. We never had a call center that needed to be managed in Southeast Asia. We don't have a fleet of fax machines. We don't have filing cabinets that need to be digitized. We were digital from day one. So the ability to leverage technology and automation to make the lives easier of customer service associates, our claims associates, so that they can get to work on your needs faster is extraordinary. So we have the data, and we're constantly building tools to try and make the lives of both our customers and staff better.
So I think that's a very interesting segue to the A world, AI, right? It's like, in a way you said even earlier that you developed learning, LLM and AI before it was called AI or before it was a thing, right? It was just a difficult challenge. So how does that come into play?
So I'm always cautious around the AI world because it can be such a loaded word these days.
I give you the freedom to give an honest practice.
I used to be one of those
Without the
people who tried to explain it's, you call it big data, but everyone else calls it statistics.
Yeah.
But look, we're seeing technologies evolve at such an extraordinarily rapid pace. And if I think back to what we built in the first 4 or 5 months, going back 5, 6 years ago now, of the company and the tools we built for tracking flights, I mean, modern AI development tools could effectively replicate our first 3 or 4 months of coding in a weekend.
Does that depress you, or does that fill you with hope?
I mean, I think it excites me.
Yeah.
Because LLMs hallucinate. There's a lot of problems there. Certainly, we would never consider denying a claim based only on the assessment of an LLM. A human must, of course, make sure that things are right and okay, and that there wasn't a hallucination. We're cautious with what tools we provide to our staff behind the scenes versus that we put in front of our customers. But we're just seeing a moment in time where there are 2 opportunities at the same time. The first is to, wherever possible, free up developers and staff members from these tedious, mundane chores that often became part of doing this business and this world, and automate so much of that so quickly and put so much power in the hands of just everyday contributors who suddenly can work with some of these tools to build themselves their own little tools and assistants and bots that empower them to do their work faster and with greater efficiency and greater accuracy. And that is incredibly exciting. And that's before we think about all the ways in which we can embed it in our product and all the efforts we're doing to embed little delightful moments. And I don't mean delightful in the sense of a chat bot that you can, ask to read you a haiku about your claim. But at the end of the day, when you interact with an insurance provider and you have a claim and you'd like that claim to be paid, we live in a day and age of instant gratification, and the ability for AI tools to very, very quickly check information, collate information, put things together, maybe instantly give you feedback on all the documents you've just submitted or all the photographs or all the information, and spot instantly whilst you're holding your phone, whilst the application is open, oh, you forgot to provide some evidence of your flight tickets. To get that information presented to you instantly whilst you're still in the middle of dealing with it. So it's just one more click and then we have everything, versus 2 weeks later when you've completely forgotten about the claim, now getting an email saying we can't find any evidence that you actually went to the airport that day. Do you have anything to prove you were there, or flight tickets or something? And then being sort of mildly annoyed, and it's 2 weeks before you remember to find the flight tickets again, and now you're mad at us because it's taken a month. I mean, just AI unlocks this world of instant gratification in a much nicer, much more meaningful way. So there's both making our staff more efficient, making our developers more efficient, and delight in the product. And I think it also means that for some of our junior staff members, they have access to 24/7 on-demand mentors, which is amazing. Those are often our most curious members of staff, most excited to learn, most willing to kind of consume, and to know that there aren't terrible mundane tasks that we can send them on because we can automate those, and now they're free to work on more interesting things. That's really exciting.
So what are the more general lessons you draw from your experience? So like I'm talking like as a co-founder, right? And somebody who's basically like one of the people that's architecting this new age company, right? So if you were saying to somebody else that's starting a company, any field, right? In any field right now, in the technology field or the B2C, B2B, and they want to incorporate both the humanity, right? The love, the feelings, but they also want to be on the cutting edge of implementing in a responsible, safe way AI technologies. How would you approach that? How do you approach it, and how do you want people to approach it?
So I think the key to working with AI, if we start there, is you have to embrace it. It's here to stay. This is not
Don't fight the AI overlords. Do not fight them.
this is not a fad. And even if it was a fad, it's here to stay anyway. A lot of something I hear time and time again from colleagues in the major AI providers is you wouldn't believe what we're working on and what you'll see next. And so I think the most important thing you can be building is the muscle around how to work with AI. And even if it can't solve a particular problem today, working with it and building in the assumption that it will get there eventually means that if 7 weeks from now, there's an announcement and suddenly one of the models can just solve this problem.
Yeah.
You're not now thinking for the first time, how would I integrate it? How would I work with it? What could I do with it? By then, it's too late. You're behind. Yeah. I mean, you'll be behind the 8 ball no matter what when it comes to technology. But I think with AI, you should just assume that it might just get there in the end. And you should build around that.
And that end is months away.
And the other thing is, we're probably heading towards a world where the models all become a little bit commoditized.
Yeah.
Whether you are working with Google or Microsoft or OpenAI or Anthropic, probably doesn't matter nearly as much as just building the skills as to how you work with AI. And from a technology company point of view, the secret sauce is in, something they call evals or evaluations. Whatever you can do to build methods of testing whether or not the AI is still solving your problem and solving your problem accurately will be far more useful than anything else, because when a new model comes out, you just kind of run your tests again and then you move from there. Or that your tests have never succeeded, and when a new model comes out, you run your tests again and you hope to pleasantly be surprised that this is the model that solves everything. But certainly it's embrace it and learn all the skills that come with working with AI and be super curious and play with things, because it's here to stay. And the people who will probably have the most success will be the people who are most willing to persevere and learn these tools. And that's why I'm also very bullish on the idea that jobs for so-called juniors isn't going anywhere, because those will be some of the most keen and excited people. They'll grow up with this technology, and much like as all good teenagers of my generation, I was able to make a bit of pocket money fixing and building websites for people. That to me was the most basic thing to do in the world, and it was like dark magic. Is probably exactly how
even to today. Even to today, to some people, it's still dark magic, mind you, right? It's like, it's interesting. It hasn't changed. I'm always surprised.
I have no doubt my kids will show me technologies and tools that will absolutely isn't aghast by, and they will just treat them as everyday things, and I will see them as magic and lunacy.
Yeah. So I want to take it one point further. It's like, so what does a company like yours, or any company that comes up in the startup in the age of AI, has to have to justify their existence, in the sense that one of the models will not just do it for them, right? Like as the capabilities of the different models becomes more robust.
I mean, let's go a step backwards, right?
Okay.
The basics of business are the basics of business.
Okay.
Understanding what happens if you run out of money, the importance of having customers who like your product, want to buy your product, hopefully want to buy your product time and time again. I mean, all of those, the fundamentals of the lemonade stand don't go away.
Yeah.
So if AI unlocks you building your product 10 times faster than you might have previously been able to do, or it allows you to do it with a fraction of the money that you might have been able to do it, just don't ignore the fundamentals, that it's a good idea to figure out whether or not anyone is going to pay for your product, to cultivate human relationships, to understand a little bit about business and marketing, because that skill set matters more than anything that comes with AI. And then, I have my own bias. I have a technology background. I've been working with computers for decades. But I still think at this point in time, it's important to know a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes. We may get to a world where models can really generate enterprise-ready, secure software that never goes down, but we're not there yet. Everyone knows that AIs and LLMs, they have a tendency to hallucinate.
Yeah.
They always get things right the first time round. I think if you don't have someone, either you or in your close orbit when building a company, who can actually look at the code, look at the output, can do some sort of a human-based sanity check, you are like, I can't predict when in the journey you're going to be in for a bad time, but at some point in the journey, you are going to be in for a bad time.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So what does the future hold for you guys? Like, I mean, even in the next couple of years, like, what do you see happen?
In many ways, we're just getting started.
So maybe I'll stop a second, because before we move to that, it's like, why don't you help us understand where you are on the journey currently, and then let's talk about what you see is the just getting started part.
Sure. So at the end of the day, the travel market in America is humongous, and there are established players that have been around for hundreds of years, even in that market. So right now, we're serving mostly leisure travelers, but we are serving travelers from all of the continental United States, whether they're traveling domestically or international. The number of travelers that we are able to help grows on a day by day and a month by month basis. And in many ways, just getting started is, of course, that the market is humongous, and there is so much space for everyone to play, including us. But really, the evolution of the company, it goes back to that first thought. People want solutions more than anything. So Faye has evolved into a platform that is hyper-focused on all the things that you need to have an amazing trip, pretty much starting from the minute you book your travel onwards. And so we've really become a platform for all of your kind of post-booking needs, whether that is tracking your flights or your destination or your safety, or ensuring that you have the right visas, or providing eSIMs, or being able to help you with currency exchange and potentially saving for the trip, and the logistics of how you go on the trip and things that you need on the day of travel. And when you come back and you're thinking about your next trip, there's an entire universe of problems to solve. And we're still only serving one geography. So when I think about just getting started, I mean, I don't see travel going anywhere. I don't think AI or VR or any other two-letter words I can come up with are going to change the fact that we live. In fact, if anything, it boosts it. I think in a world where you can generate AI images of you at the Eiffel Tower in 2 seconds flat, actually going and seeing it with your own eyes and being there is so much more valuable than ever before. So travel is here to stay, and inflation is probably here to stay. So travel is going to continue to be an expensive pursuit in a time where people really want to make sure that what they thought they were spending on their trip is all that they're spending on their trip. No one wants a large surprise medical bill, or to forfeit their deposit, or to find that all of their gifts that they've bought for the way back home have gone on walkabouts. And travel will probably continue to get more complicated as we think about visas and entry restrictions and the complexities of travel and flights. And so that's why I just see the mission of looking after travelers, before they travel, when they come back, as they're getting ready for their next trip. It's just such an amazingly large universe to play in, that there's just so much more that we will do. So it's very much in our DNA right now. It also exists in our values. We're quite open and public and transparent. When we're looking for people to join the company, we are also looking for people that hopefully share our values. I think one of the things that we hear time and time again when people join us from other providers in the space, so we often hear, I got into this industry because I really, really wanted to look after people. And then I just found myself in a company where corporate rules and financial austerity or bureaucracy meant that I was regularly doing the opposite of what I wanted to do. And I'm so excited by Faye's promise that if I come here, I will actually be looking for all the reasons why I can pay your claim. And I can help you today, not all the reasons why I can't. And I think that's really, I don't think
Yeah.
anyone ever gets into a business associated with travel or insurance or any of these things hoping that they will make the lives of travelers just that little bit worse. They can imagine, imagine or remember every time they've traveled and something's gone wrong and all the things that they wish could have been provided for them on that day. And they relish the opportunity to be part of that solution.
So, but how do you hire for that?
I mean, I think so much of that is, at least for now, is people will gravitate towards us because they're attracted to that idea of what
Yeah.
we're doing. And not that I mean, we can have a whole separate conversation on hiring. Hiring is a world unto itself, but no one should be hiring for pure technical talent. I mean, especially if we go back to the age of AI, probably the ability for people to learn and upskill has never been easier. So looking for the right set of soft skills or personality fits or good references from people who loved working with this person you're considering
Yeah.
to with. I mean, those things just matter a lot more. Right? I don't know if I have the answer to that. Like many good entrepreneurs, I absolutely fell into this world. I didn't gravitate towards it. It wasn't on my bingo card. Someone I knew and liked and was convincing suggested that I joined them in founding a startup with other people, one of which 15 years now working together. Fortunately, I thought, why not? But it wasn't like, oh my goodness, I've been waiting for this moment my whole life. It was why not? And the journey was very much one day at a time. And now I couldn't imagine it any other way when the opportunity presented itself to step down from the first company, which is still alive and well and profitable and successful, and to kind of pursue a second act. It didn't cross my mind to go back to the world of employment if there was the opportunity to kind of get on the merry-go-round again.
Well, I understand that, but you have to explain it to people. Why didn't that not even cross your mind?
Look, for me personally, and I imagine a number of entrepreneurs would say the same thing, there is a certain thrill and exhilaration, perhaps it's masochistic, about building a startup. Because I certainly will tell anyone that I wouldn't wish a startup on my worst enemy.
Yes.
And I say that sentence whilst admitting that when I had the opportunity to build a new startup in my life, that was the first thing I gravitated towards. Not because it was my background, but because I was ready and keen for the excitement, adventure, and challenge of starting with a completely blank piece of paper and willing an entire enterprise into existence, knowing full well that at any point in time, it may not work out until it works out.
Yeah.
I think everyone's journey is different. I am incredibly lucky and blessed to have always been surrounded by amazing co-founders. Once again, we talk about this idea of, amazing co-founders who are people that I have effectively built a life alongside of and with, and the level of trust is extraordinary, and the type of friendship that comes with it is powerful, and I take so much joy and satisfaction and pride from all of that. And I didn't even know that going into it. I mean, that was just a lucky benefit of being part of it. And so I guess I hesitated a lot before going into entrepreneurship. I mean, I had to be prodded a little bit, and maybe I should have run head first. But certainly, the two greatest lessons that I've learned the hard way is finding the right mixture of patience and impatience, and understanding that sometimes you really just have to keep chipping away at a problem while simultaneously learning the when to not take no for an answer, or just to find another way around. I mean, some of the greatest successes we've had in this company and previous companies were just not being afraid to ask for help or a connection, or if someone is interested in, back to hiring people that we didn't even have a company for. I mean, we just weren't afraid to ask if they wanted to join us.
Yeah.
I said yes, but plenty of people probably would have thought, oh, I couldn't possibly approach the head of claims of Allianz. He manages hundreds of people. He's built their entire operation. Allianz is one of the largest financial companies on the planet. Why would someone join a startup which at the time consisted of 4 people? But you don't know if you don't ask.
Yeah. I mean, and again, you didn't talk about the no's, right? You still have to maintain that attitude when you get the no's, right?
Oh, there are so many no's. You just
No's, right?
to eventually learn to sort of accept them and move on and look for the and
And I think, and again, maybe I'm putting words in your mouths. So I'm taking what you said one step further. It's like, I think what's very important to understand is that only the yeses counts. Only the yeses counts. Because if you raise money and like 197 people tell you no, and the 198 funds you, and you go take that money and be successful, that what matters, right? In the same way in hiring clients and all that. As long as you got to a yes, nobody cares how many frogs you had to kiss on the way, because as long as you found your prince, princess, whatever analogy you find more appealing. It's like that.
I absolutely agree. Although I will say, it is important to know your worth.
Yeah.
Okay, you should. If it comes down to fundraising, we've been very, very lucky. We love and appreciate all of the companies that have invested in us. We are fortunate to have the people we have on our board. That's not always the case with everyone, but we also chose to take and accept money from people that we wanted to work with, we wanted to partner with. But obviously, there are plenty of people that we would have loved to have worked with that said no to us. And we're very lucky that the people who said yes have always been good people. But my goodness, if you pack up shop and go home the first time you hear no, you won't last 10 seconds in a startup.
No. And that's why it's really not for everybody. And I really agree with you. Like, I wouldn't wish a startup to my worst enemy. It's like, and again, this also comes up and again in in this conversation with other entrepreneurs. It's like, I really believe that if you have a choice, like you might consider not doing it, right? If for some reason, if it's not like if you don't have a chip on your shoulder, or you don't have this vision, or you don't have this obsession, or you don't have this masochistic tendencies, whatever that is, of aspiration. And I really, really connected with your example, with your metaphor of taking a blank piece of paper and making an enterprise of it, like the joy you get from that creation. Maybe you shouldn't do it. Maybe you shouldn't do it.
I know people who did not accept entrepreneurship, and they actually have the ability to turn their phone off at night when they go to. It's
Who are those crazy people? Who are those crazy people?
I hear there are these things called vacations where you just work.
And people travel and they need insurance for. Amazing. So I think this is you got me laughing. Good to wrap things up. If people want to reach you and find you, where should they go?
So firstly, you can always find me through Faye with Faye.com. One of these days we will figure out how to have Faye.com, but that is still the purview of a famous Chinese singer, Faye Wong. And fan club is not going anywhere. So with Faye.com, for people who want to either learn more about the company or hopefully purchase travel protection with us. And you can also find me on LinkedIn at Daniel Green and Faye. It should be an easy combination to find.
Dan, it's been a pleasure. It was very insightful and very funny at times. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. This was a fun conversation.
Okay. Cheers.
It's a wrap. This Ageas podcast episode ends here, but you don't. Now, is it crazy to think that you know somebody who'd love this episode? Share it with them, and they'll love you for it.